Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses today. As you've heard, yesterday the Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection held a hearing yesterday on protecting youth online. And our witness was the CEO of Instagram. I asked him about steps that the company was taking to combat harmful and problematic content relating to eating disorders on their platform, and urged him to invest more resources into human reviewers to help tackle that problem. But as internal research from Meta shared with us by the whistleblower Frances Haugen has shown, it is Instagram's algorithms that can cause users to be drawn deeper into exposure to such harmful content. Ms. Gonzalez, do you believe that we can truly get to the bottom of this particular problem relating to eating disorders or other problematic content like hate speech or vaccine disinformation or misinformation by simply pushing better moderation by platforms? Or do we really need to address how algorithms amplify and magnify and target that problematic content to users?
Thanks for the question, Senator Baldwin. You know, I think this is really tricky because, of course, Congress needs to abide by the First Amendment. And so there's a limit to how deeply you can get into content. However, what's really clear to me is that Congress has the ability and the responsibility to help the American people and help parents like me understand more about these problems by compelling transparency from the companies so we understand what's happening and how our children's personal and private data and their behavior is being tracked online and then used to target them with these kinds of messages, whether that's information about eating disorders or like in the case of my children, they're both big into gaming and watching other gamers talk about how they play the game. And I've noticed even with them, they're very young, they get pushed down a path where suddenly they were watching just really mean content. So I think it's critically important to compel transparency and to set some limits about how all of our private data can be used, but especially our children's private data.
Thank you. In 2016, in that presidential election, my home state of Wisconsin was one of the top targets for Russian influence efforts through targeted advertising on Facebook. Since then, we've seen numerous efforts by foreign and now domestic actors to use Facebook and other social media platforms to spread divisive content and misinformation. We've heard time and time again from these companies that they're taking steps to stop their services from being used to undermine elections. But I'm concerned that we will keep facing this problem when we are also facing an erosion of public trust in our elections. Ms. Jackson, to what degree do you think Facebook's algorithms contribute to the spread and amplification of misinformation like that received by voters in Wisconsin in 2016? And do you think Facebook or other platforms have taken sufficient steps to address how they can be vectors for divisive and misleading content that can undermine our democracy?
Thank you, Senator. It's one of the most important questions we could focus on. And I think what it comes down to is the ability of actors, whether that's the Russian state, a terrorist organization, or a well-intended but misinformed neighbor, to manipulate or be manipulated by a platform without our knowledge is a threat to our democracy. And there are a few things going on there that we should focus on. One is, my organization was involved in something called the Election Integrity Partnership. We worked with Stanford and the University of Washington, closely with DHS CISA, and frankly, the platforms on a narrowly targeted issue, 2020, in response to 2016, to figure out how we could better track what was going on. And we found decent success in that partnership, But we noted that the platforms themselves had very different content moderation policies, as well as extremely different transparency standards for how they communicated those policies outward. So one starting point is ensuring that there are, in fact, content moderation standards, and secondly, that those are public. The second, though, is I don't think that self-regulation alone is sufficient, and it gets to the point that when the misinformation and disinformation that you were talking about in Wisconsin, that didn't just happen on Facebook. That's cross-platform. They used YouTube. They go into groups. They talk. They organized actual events. And so, were we to say that, is Facebook solely responsible or capable of addressing this problem, we'd be missing a large piece of the puzzle. And returning again to the importance of data protection and privacy requirements, meaning that I would know, for instance, if the Russian state was attempting to buy ads, I was limiting the ability of the Russian state to target me on the basis of my predilections. All of those things that will provide better safety and a safer and more productive environment across the board digitally will also prevent our adversaries from manipulating us and harming our democracy. So it's fundamentally important, and if I can say it 12 more times, privacy, privacy, privacy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.